My unhinged sister goaded me into ending my own life while my mom egged her on with glee. So I hatched a plan to slip out of the house without a sound. Mom intercepted me and unleashed every dirty trick in her arsenal to keep me trapped, plus 3 updates that show how it all unfolded in the end. When I mustered the courage to tell my abusive mom that I was seriously considering moving out for college, hoping for some independence after years of walking on eggshells, she completely lost it right there in our cramped living room, the faded floral curtains drawn against the afternoon sun that filtered through in dusty beams. Her face crumpled like tissue paper, and she started sobbing uncontrollably, big heaving cries that echoed off the peeling wallpaper, screaming at the top of her lungs that I must not love her at all if I was even thinking about leaving the nest she'd so carefully built for us. The air grew thick with her dramatics, the scent of her cheap lavender perfume mixing with the stale coffee from her mug on the side table, making my stomach churn. My sister, hearing the commotion from her room down the hall where posters of bands she'd outgrown still hung crookedly, sauntered in with that casual curiosity she always wore like a mask, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor as she asked what the hell was going on. Mom, without missing a beat, pointed a trembling finger at me and wailed even louder, her voice cracking like thunder, that I didn't care about her one bit and was plotting to abandon her, to move away and leave her all alone in this God-forsaken house, as if I were some heartless traitor deserting the family. My sister didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone from her jeans pocket with a flick of her wrist, her nails chipped from biting them, a habit she'd had since we were kids, and fired off this vicious direct message to me, completely out of the blue, her thumbs flying across the screen with that practiced speed she used for all her online rants. The words popped up on my screen like poison darts. You stupid bitch. I fucking hate you. You're absolute trash. And I'm over the moon that you got robbed last month. No one loves you and no one ever will. You pathetic loser. How dare you make mom cry like that? She's been nothing but kind to you your entire miserable life, bending over backward, and all she ever wanted was for you to stay put and appreciate it. You're never going to amount to anything worthwhile, just a failure waiting to happen. And I know you've been spiraling lately, thinking about offing yourself, so why don't you just do it already? Seriously, go ahead. No one's going to give a damn or shed a tear. Remember how your boyfriend dumped your sorry ass last year? That should tell you everything. No one cares about you. Not even a little. I hope you get raped again. You deserve it, but I better shut up now before you go running to the cops on me like you always did to mom when we were little brats fighting over toys. There's so much more shit I'd love to spew at you. Unload every last bit, but I don't want to come across as some bully. Even though you make it so easy, as those words burned into my brain, each one landing like a slap, I felt the hot sting of tears welling up, blurring my vision until they spilled over, tracing salty paths down my cheeks that I couldn't stop, no matter how hard I blinked. The room spun a little, the familiar clutter of family photos on the mantel mocking me with frozen smiles from better days that never really existed. Mom caught sight of me breaking down, my shoulders shaking with silent sobs, and instead of any shred of comfort or remorse, she threw her head back and started laughing hysterically, a wild, uncontrollable cackle that bounced off the walls like shattering glass, her eyes sparkling with malicious delight as she called out to my sister that she was absolutely hilarious, a real comedian in the making. You're not going anywhere, you hear me? Mom snarled at me through her laughter, her voice dropping to a menacing growl as she wiped tears of mirth from her eyes, before turning on her heel and striding out of the room, her footsteps heavy and purposeful on the creaky hardwood, leaving behind a chill that settled deep in my bones. I wanted nothing more than to grab my keys and bolt out the front door right then. The urge to flee so strong it made my legs twitch. But where would I even go? I had no safe haven lined up, no friend's couch to crash on without dragging them into this mess, and the thought of wandering aimless streets in the fading light terrified me almost as much as staying. I tried to steady my breathing, counting inhales and exhales like some half-remembered therapy trick, my mind racing through options that all seemed dead ends. But then my sister reappeared in the doorway, that smug, self-satisfied smirk stretching across her face like she'd just won a twisted lottery. She stopped dead in front of me, close enough that I could smell the mint gum she was chewing, her eyes locking onto mine with a challenging glare, as if daring me to lash out or defend myself. What's wrong? She asked, her tone dripping with phony concern, the kind that made my skin crawl because I knew it was all an act, a setup for more cruelty. She didn't even pause for me to muster a response, just barreled on. Oh wait, I totally forgot. You don't have any real feelings, do you? You're just this empty, soulless shell wandering around, convinced the whole world owes you something for nothing. I clamped my mouth shut, not trusting a single word to escape without it turning into a scream or dissolving into more tears, refusing to hand her the satisfaction of seeing me crack further. The tension coiled in my chest like a spring, my jaw aching from clenching so hard. She leaned in even closer, her breath warm and invasive against my ear, whispering like a serpent, "You're such a pathetic little crybaby. Always have been. No wonder nobody wants you around. Sucking the life out of every room you enter." Then, without warning, she shifted behind me, and before I could even flinch or turn. She flicked the back of my head with a sharp snap of her finger, the pain blooming like a sudden headache, making me stumble forward a step or two on the worn rug. She erupted in laughter again, that harsh, mocking sound that grated like nails on a chalkboard. "Oopsie," she said, "not sorry at all. Didn't see you there. My bad." The sting throbbed, a dull pulse matching my heartbeat, but I didn't turn around. Didn't give her the reaction she craved. I just stood there frozen, fists clenched at my sides, nails digging crescents into my palms, trying desperately to hold the fragments of myself together. I felt utterly trapped, like the walls were closing in, the air growing thicker with every second. My mind screaming for escape, but my body rooted to the spot. She circled back, leaning in once more, her voice a low hiss right against my ear. "You know, you really should do everyone a massive favor and just disappear for good. You'd be sparing us all the headache of dealing with your drama." I squeezed my eyes shut tight, the darkness behind my lids a temporary refuge, wishing with every fiber of my being that I could melt into the floorboards, vanish into thin air, be anywhere but this suffocating space filled with her venom. She finally pulled back, letting out another burst of that mean-spirited laugh that echoed in my ears long after. "Yeah, that's what I thought. Keep pretending you're all brave and tough, but we both know you're nothing but a coward at heart." With that, she turned and walked away casually, as if she hadn't just shredded what was left of my spirit. Her footsteps fading down the hallway, leaving me standing there alone, still shaking from head to toe, my head pounding where she'd struck, but that physical ache paling in comparison to the crushing weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to draw a full breath. That night, I retreated to my room as soon as I could, turning the lock with a soft click that felt like a small act of defiance. The door's wood cool against my forehead as I leaned against it for a moment, gathering my shattered nerves. I knew deep down that I couldn't stay in this toxic hellhole any longer. It was like being stuck in an endless nightmare, every day a fresh layer of torment that chipped away at my sanity. I sat on the edge of my bed, the mattress sagging under my weight, staring blankly at the cracked plaster wall opposite me, the faint glow from my bedside lamp casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. My mind whirled, trying to piece together a escape plan that wouldn't crumble at the first hurdle. I couldn't just stroll out the front door. Mom and sister would be on me like hawks, blocking every exit with their rage. I needed something clever, foolproof, a way to slip away under the cover of darkness, perhaps. First things first, I grabbed my phone from where it lay charging on the nightstand, the screen's blue light harsh in the dim room, and opened up the messages from my sister. With trembling fingers, I took screenshots of every damning word, capturing the full extent of her cruelty and Next came the practicalities. I jotted a mental list of must-haves to pack, whispering it to myself like a mantra. Comfortable clothes for the road, my laptop for job searches and connections, a few dog-eared books that had been my escape during rough nights, and the roughly $300 I'd squirreled away from my part-time gig at the local coffee shop, the bills still carrying a faint aroma of espresso bean. My heart pounded erratically as I began packing a compact duffel bag I'd hidden under my bed, moving as quietly as possible, the zipper's soft rasp sounding deafening in the silence. I rolled up t-shirts and jeans tightly to save space, tucked the laptop in its sleeve with the charger coiled neatly, and buried the cash at the bottom beneath a layer of socks. Every rustle of fabric made me pause, ears straining for any sign of movement in the house, the old building's creaks and groans amplifying my paranoia. It felt wrong, like I was the criminal sneaking around, but I reminded myself over and over that this was self-preservation, that I couldn't keep faking normalcy in a place that was slowly poisoning me from the inside out. Just as I was zipping the bag closed, the final tooth catching with a faint click, I heard footsteps approaching down the hallway, heavy and deliberate, my heart leaping into my throat like a trapped bird. I froze mid-motion, breath caught as the doorknob rattled aggressively. I'd locked it earlier, thank God, but Mom's voice sliced through the wood like a knife. "Open this door right now," sharp and laced with that familiar annoyance that always preceded a blow-up. I hesitated for a split second, my mind blanking, then forced myself to stand and twist the lock, the mechanism turning with a reluctant grind. She shoved the door open hard enough to bang against the wall, standing there with arms crossed tightly over her chest, her glare piercing like daggers as her eyes immediately zeroed in on the half-packed bag sprawled on my bed, the realization dawning across her features like a storm cloud. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice rising an octave, stepping fully into the room and invading my space, the scent of her earlier dinner, garlic and onions, wafting over me. I tried to play it cool, to keep my voice steady, despite the panic bubbling up like acid in my throat. "I'm just packing some stuff," I said, my words coming out shakier than intended. "You know, for college. Wanted to be prepared, that's all." But she wasn't buying it. I could see the skepticism hardening her expression, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Don't you lie to me, girl," she snapped, advancing another step, her finger jabbing the air accusingly. "You think you're leaving after everything I've done for you? All the sacrifices, the years of putting up with your ungrateful attitude? You think you're going to just waltz out and live some perfect little life without us? Well, you're not. You're not going anywhere, you hear me?" I swallowed hard, my mouth dry as sandpaper, forcing a weak smile that felt like it might crack my face. "I'm not trying to leave right now, Mom. Honest. I was just getting things together. I'm not not going anywhere, I promise. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I knew arguing would only escalate things into a full-blown war, and I wasn't ready for that yet. She stared me down for what felt like an eternity, her eyes boring into mine like she was trying to peel back layers and expose the truth hidden beneath. I held her gaze as best I could, willing my expression to stay neutral, calm, even as my insides twisted into knots. Finally, she stepped back with a contemptuous sneer, her shoulders relaxing just a fraction. "That's right," she said, her voice dripping with triumph. "You're not going anywhere. You belong here, with your family. Don't you ever forget that?" I nodded meekly, murmuring a quiet, "I won't forget," my voice barely above a whisper, playing the part of the defeated daughter to perfection. She gave me one last withering glare, her eyes raking over me like I was something distasteful, before pivoting and storming out, slamming the door behind her with enough force to rattle the pictures on the walls. I let out a long, shaky breath I'd been holding, feeling like I'd just sprinted a marathon, my hands trembling uncontrollably as I sank back onto the bed. But even in that moment of reprieve, my resolve hardened like steel. I wasn't going to let her words chain me here. I finished packing the last few items, stuffing them in with quiet determination, my mind already plotting the next move. I didn't know exactly how I'd pull it off, but I was getting out of this house, even if it meant creeping out in the dead of night when the world was asleep. I had to escape. I couldn't let them shatter me completely. I'm breaking free from this nightmare, no matter what twisted obstacles they throw my way. Something else I should mention is that I'd managed to secretly contact an old acquaintance from school, someone I'd reconnected with online. I poured out the whole sordid family situation in hushed messages, and she and her parents, who had a vague acquaintance with my mom from community events, offered to let me stay with them if I could make it there without anyone knowing my whereabouts. They lived in a quiet suburb a couple hours away, their house a potential sanctuary with its wraparound porch and blooming garden I'd seen in photos. That's where I'm heading, come hell or high water. Update 1. My hands are still shaking like leaves in a storm, but I'm finally on the bus headed to a domestic violence shelter downtown, the city's lights blurring past the grimy window as we rumble along the highway. I'm scared out of my mind, every bump jolting me with fresh anxiety, but I had no choice after the acquaintance's family bailed at the last minute. They said my mom's temper is too unpredictable, too scary when she explodes, and they worried if she somehow sniffed out my location, she'd show up and cause a scene or worse, putting them in the crosshairs. I'm furious and hurt. How could she possibly find out? They're miles away, in a different county even, with no direct ties. Right now, I look like absolute hell. Hair matted and greasy, clothes wrinkled and stained from sweat, dark circles under my eyes like bruises, and it's all because everything went down in a frenzy. The night I tried to leave, sneaking down the stairs with my duffel slung over my shoulder, the floorboards creaking traitorously under my weight, Mom caught me at the front door, her silhouette looming in the hallway light like a monster from my nightmares. She screamed bloody murder, hurling a heavy glass vase that shattered against the wall, inches from my head, shards flying like shrapnel and nicking my arm with a sharp sting. She spat the vilest things, threats to my life that echoed in the empty house. "You leave and you're dead to me. I'll make sure you regret it." Her face twisted in rage, veins bulging in her neck. I didn't even have time to grab a jacket or brush my teeth. I just ran out into the cool night air, the door slamming behind me as her curses followed, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Update 2. I'm sitting in the ER waiting room now, finally getting my prescription meds refilled. The shelter stepped up and is covering the costs, which is a godsend since my wallet's running on fumes. I'm paranoid about getting side-eyed by the nurses or other patients because I literally rolled out of that chaos without a second to freshen up. I look disheveled, smell like fear and old sweat, my shirt clinging uncomfortably. But escaping was priority 1. Judgment be damned. The shelter itself is a breath of fresh air, clean linens on the bed, a private corner to curl up in without constant dread, no yelling piercing the walls or that knot in my stomach wondering if tonight's the night things escalate to physical blows. It's so peaceful drifting off without fearing for my safety, the soft hum of the Asa lullaby compared to home's chaos. Only catch is the 30-day limit. Time's ticking to find stability. I've got a job interview lined up tomorrow at a local cinema. Popcorn scents and dim theaters sound like heaven right now. Thinking I'll be straight with them, I'm in a shelter, desperate for work to get on my feet. No sugarcoating. Oh, and my acquaintance and her folks flipped their script again, saying if I'm still adrift after the 30 days, I can crash there. Just need to scrape together bus fare. Small mercies, I guess. Update 3. Whoa, it's been almost 3 years since I poured my guts out here, begging for any scrap of advice to survive that hell. These old posts just resurfaced in my memory, like ghosts from a bad dream, and rereading them now, I want to reach back through time and wrap my younger self in the tightest hug, because I'd somehow blocked out just how brutal and soul-crushing it all was, the daily grind of fear and belittlement. And to all you strangers who chimed in with tips and encouragement, I want to hug you too. I scribbled down your words on scraps of paper, tucked them away, and actually used them. Step by step, they guided me out of the darkness. So here's the final chapter to this nightmare saga, and spoiler, it's a damn happy one, full of love. The shelter turned out to be a lifesaver, brand spanking new with all the bells and whistles. The staff mentioned how the old facility was was overcrowded and run down, so I hit the jackpot arriving when I did, right as they opened their doors. After that first nerve-wracking day, where every sound made me jump like a startled cat, my body finally relaxed, and I could just breathe, deep and free, without that constant vice grip on my chest. There were about 7 other women there, each with their own stories etched in weary eyes and resilient smiles, and we all had our own private rooms, simple but cozy, with fresh sheets that smelled like laundry detergent, and ensuite bathrooms stocked with basics like shampoo that didn't sting my eyes. I was the youngest by far, barely out of my teens, and the others took me under their wings like big sisters I never had, dishing out life advice over shared cups of herbal tea in the common kitchen, tips on budgeting, spotting red flags in relationships, even how to negotiate a raise without backing down. They hyped me up for job interviews, doing my makeup with gentle hands, the scent of foundation and mascara, a novel comfort, transforming my tired face into something confident and ready, per the house rules. We rotated cooking duties, and those evenings became highlights, chopping vegetables with dull knives, stirring pots of pasta sauce that bubbled with garlic and tomatoes, the aromas filling the space and creating a sense of normalcy I hadn't felt in years. We built this quiet rapport, sharing laughs over burnt toast or swapping recipes from our past lives, bonds forming in the quiet moments that made the place feel less like a refuge and more like a temporary home. The staff were incredible, real MVPs, patient listeners who sat with me during low points, offering wisdom on healing from trauma without pushing too hard, their voices calm and reassuring like a warm blanket on a cold night. Security was top-notch too. Knowing there were cameras and locked doors let me sleep soundly for the first time in forever. No more jolting awake at every creak, expecting the worst. Oh, and I almost forgot this sweet touch. A local church group swung by one afternoon with handmade quilts they'd sewn just for us, vibrant patches of fabric stitched with love and prayers. Mine's a cozy mix of blues and greens, soft as a cloud, and I still have it draped over my couch. I snuggle under it on rough days, hand-washing it with care, and it takes me back to that turning point, reminding me how far I've climbed. We had mandatory group therapy sessions in a circle of mismatched chairs, where we'd share without judgment, tears flowing freely sometimes, and individual counseling that dug deep into the scars left by family abuse, learning that what I'd endured counted as domestic violence, full stop, and that leaving wasn't betrayal, but self-preservation. Not every shelter's a fairy tale, I know, but if you're in the thick of it, don't hesitate, just go. Resources are out there, and it's worth the leap. Job-wise, I lucked out with a position at a retail store that paid way better than the cinema gig I'd eyed. I was upfront in the interview about my situation, but fibbed a bit saying I wasn't planning back to school anytime soon, because let's face it, movie wages wouldn't cover rent in a cardboard box. I chose to strike out solo instead of crashing with the acquaintance who'd offered, craving my own stable ground after so much upheaval. Nothing felt secure post-escape, and I wanted a safety net of my own making, knowing I could always seek shelter again if needed. Ended up renting a modest room from an older trucker guy who was on the road more than home. Our schedules never synced, so we'd communicate via sticky notes on the fridge. Stay safe out there. Grabbed milk for ya. I kept his final farewell note, a simple good luck kid that warmed me during lonely nights. Wasn't thrilled sharing space with a stranger, especially a man, the unease prickling like static, but options were slim. He was respectful, no drama, and it bridged me to better. I dove back into school the next semester once my medical leave wrapped. Not at my old uni though. Needed a clean slate, far from family shadows, since they knew the prior spot and might have stirred trouble. Applications poured my survival story into essays, raw and real, turning pain into power. My sister's old taunt that I'd never be anything, she was dead wrong, and deep down, I think she knew it. Her words just a reflection of her own emptiness. Graduated this year, walking that stage with a cap tassel swinging, the auditorium air buzzing with cheers. A few years older than planned, but who cares? The break was a blessing, giving me time to heal without the pressure of deadlines looming like guillotines. Now I've got stability I've only dreamed of, a steady job in marketing, my own cozy apartment with plants thriving on the windowsill, bills paid on time, and a routine that feels like freedom. On the personal front, I just got engaged to the most wonderful man. A kind soul with a family that's embraced me like one of their own from day one. They're always saying, "You're family now." And I believe them, the warmth in their hugs chasing away old chills. His mom, my future mother-in-law, is like the nurturing figure I never had. We chat weekly over coffee, her kitchen smelling of fresh-baked cookies, sharing stories and advice without a hint of judgment. A few days ago, I got hit with food poisoning for the first time. Nasty stuff had me glued to the bathroom, weak as a kitten, and my fiancé didn't hesitate. At 2 a.m., he slipped out to grab Pedialyte, ensuring I stayed hydrated, his car keys jingling softly in the quiet night. When I emerged, pale and shaky, he had lentil soup simmering on the stove, unasked, the savory aroma filling our home like a hug. As a kid, when I'd vomit, Mom would just snap, "Go back to sleep," dismissing me like an inconvenience. This care, this thoughtfulness, it's healing in ways I can't fully describe, making me tear up sometimes. I still catch myself saying, "You don't have to," when he does something sweet. Like old habits dying hard, but he's patient, reminding me I'm worth it. He's got 6 siblings, a boisterous crew that's become the brothers and sisters I always wished for. Holidays are chaos in the best way, laughter echoing over board games and massive dinners, no undercurrents of tension or cruelty. Through all this, I've learned to value myself fiercely, to fill the voids left by unloving hands. No one made me feel special growing up, so now I do it for myself, buying fresh flowers weekly, vibrant tulips or roses that brighten my table, a therapist's suggestion that's become a ritual of self-love. When I'm sick, I prioritize rest, curling up with tea and books without guilt, no disruptions allowed. Personal space was never respected before, so now I have full days where my phone's on silent, just me time, walks in the park with leaves crunching underfoot, or journaling by candlelight, the wax scent calming. Small acts, but they rebuild what was broken. Looking back to that shelter moment, tears streaming as the 30-day clock ticked like a bomb, feeling utterly depressed and hopeless. Convinced nothing good could sprout in such short time, I couldn't see the light, but life pivoted in the most beautiful ways, positive directions I never anticipated. Thank you from the bottom of my mended heart.